I actually had to borrow the money from the bank to get the product, go to Harrods. They pulled it and I was stuck with thousands and thousands of pounds worth of product.
It's not who you hire, it's who you don't fire.
Basically, if we'd have left it going that way, probably we would have been bankrupt in 6 weeks.
They actually made people redundant that afternoon that the Twin Towers came down. Hello and welcome to the show. Her name is
Ali Francis and his name is
Stephen Conway.
Yes.
And today we're talking all things about what we've learned running our various businesses.
Yes.
And which we have learned an awful lot. So what's your first tip of the day for people who are watching this, either who are starting out on their entrepreneurial journey or thinking about it, and also, you know, those who are already in their entrepreneurial journey? So where do you want to start this in terms of tips?
Okay, so I think let's start with testing. And I think one of the big mistakes I made is I did not test enough. So years ago when I had a beauty business, I just did not actually test the market's response to the product before I actually then went and spent thousands that I borrowed from the bank to actually launch a product that I hadn't actually tested enough.
Yeah.
So that
and actually in those days it was a lot tougher to test things, whereas these days it's a lot easier to test them.
Yeah, of course, you got like in those days, I'm talking about when we didn't actually have the internet, so it was very difficult to test. But nevertheless, there were other ways you could do market research. And because I was a bit lazy in the market research, I just went straight for it because I loved the product. I was convinced everyone would love it. I was passionate about it. Why wouldn't everyone else be passionate about it?
What product was this?
It was my lifting Gambe. It was a product, and it was an Italian product for actually tanning legs. You know, it was and I had a place in Harrods, and they were going to take it on, and then I went off and they sent me a pro forma. Hadn't really tested it still at that point.
As in, you hadn't tested the product, as in whether it was good, or hadn't tested whether?
No, it was a good. No, I tested it, but I really loved it, but I hadn't actually got enough feedback to see if everyone else loved it.
And just tan the legs? You didn't tan the body and the face?
No, it was like a great big beautiful sort of like beauty palette with powder in it with a massive big brush, and it used to make the skin look really lovely and moisturised.
Is this the idea that then the legs would look great in stockings or what have you?
It would look like you've got stockings on. That was the point. So the legs would be slightly tanned and it would improve the skin tone. I just thought it was the best thing since sliced bread.
Right.
So I thought I don't need to do the testing because I think it's brilliant. But then I actually had to borrow the money from the bank to get the product, go to Harrods. They pulled it and I was stuck with thousands and thousands of pounds worth of product. So
how long did it take before they pulled it?
Well, they sent me a preventivo. They sent me a purchase order, a purchase order, which they then pulled. So on the back of the purchase order,
it didn't even get to the stores.
No, it didn't get to the stores. So was this in the time of Mohammed Al Fayed or prior to that? It would have been. It would have been. Okay. So there were no rules and regulations. So my other tip is that, yes, while it's all very prestigious going into Harrods or Harvey Nicks or whatever, you need to be careful. You need to make sure you can get something that if it's an order, like a purchase order, can they pull it? Once they've actually placed the purchase order, have you got any legs to stand on? Because actually when I went to the bank to borrow the money, the bank manager said to me, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, "Yeah, this is going to be really great," because he had just had a situation with someone who'd put a lot of fitness equipment in. I think it was Selfridges. He kitted the whole thing out, and then Selfridges decided they changed their mind, and actually that sent him bankrupt. So the first thing is testing. The second thing is be careful who you're dealing with, because it might be prestigious to be in these incredible places, but you're nobody and you don't have a leg to stand on, so it's you against them. So be very, very careful when you're dealing with those sort of places. Great to be in it, but you have to be careful with what sort of deal, what's written down and everything else. So
let me ask a few, am I allowed to ask a few more questions about this? Because I always find this fascinating. So number one, the bit that you were saying that you could test it, but the point being was that it wasn't tested on the basis of they put a purchase order in, but then pulled the purchase order before the products even landed in the stores.
Yeah, exactly.
So they didn't even ever get to find out whether it would be successful.
Well, I mean, only the purchase order team. So I was there, demonstrating the product. They liked it, but that was all they did. But I just think they changed their mind. They probably had another offer or another product that they liked better, and they just pulled mine and put the other one in.
Right. So basically, at the last minute, they said, no, we're not going ahead with that purchase order. We don't want the product. They were rescinding it. By which stage you bought the stock. This is such a common thing I hear with buyers in retail. They are, some of the stories I hear are awful, because they're a law unto themselves, and actually they don't give a monkey's stuff whether I know that this doesn't apply to all retailers. So I'm going to say that, I do appreciate some retailers have much better values than others, but I have heard some stories, awful stories, one involving a very large supermarket, which I'll share with you, but the supermarket will remain nameless, but I will tell that story in a bit. So how much stock did you buy?
I bought £20,000 worth, which was a lot of money in those days.
How long ago was this?
Well, it was about 25 years ago.
Oh my God! So it was that's like a 60 grand, 70 grand worth of
massive. It was massive. So because I am not risk averse and never have been, and I just went, yeah, this is great, because I just thought this is just really great. It's the best thing since sliced bread. But be careful, just because you think it's great, it doesn't mean everyone else is going to think it's great.
Well, they did think it was. The thing is, they did think it was great, but something happened. Something happened between it being great and them then taking it in store that made them change their mind. Now, that could have been they got offered a different product, or they found a different product, or they changed some kind of thought process with regards to how they were
it could just be it could just be profit margins. They could
another where they were going to put it. Another product came along. They were like, well, we can make way more money with this one.
Exactly.
With Ali's leg tanning. So two things. How did they tell you, first of all, and then what did you do about it?
Right. Well, I just got an email. No, a call or a letter. I can't remember what it was in those days now. So basically, I was stuck with all this stuff. Luckily, I had a clinic, and I just put it all out in my clinic. And over probably about 5 years, I sold it over about 5 years.
Thank God.
I loved it. My clients actually liked it.
But right.
But
so the next question,
next
question is, with regards to you testing, then, what could you have done differently that would have resulted in a different outcome for you?
I think what I would have done on hindsight is I would have gathered a number of testimonials that I could have actually presented with the product, one, and two, asked the question, what happens if you pull the order? Because I'm now going to put a purchase order in, a large purchase order in for Harrods. In the event that you cancel the order, where do I stand? And I never asked that question. I think that's the key thing. It was a great product, and my clients did love the product, and they reordered the product. But obviously, they found something else that they like better. But I think
part
it's
of
my
the issue,
fault.
obviously. Part of the issue is that you obviously want to take the contract that you got them to sign, or they got you to sign, to a lawyer. But that's quite expensive, and I
wouldn't have had a leg to stand on. Nothing was signed. It was just there was
like
no terms and conditions. Nowadays it's all T's and C's.
Yeah.
Right. In those days, I didn't even think about terms and conditions.
Friendly,
it was all like handshakes and nods in those days, whereas now it's much more about crossing the T's and dotting the I's. So,
and you say anybody else who didn't have a clinic would have gone under.
Well, yeah, I mean, exactly, they would have done, because I would have been, where would I have sold it all? But I was very fortunate that I did have a clinic, so I did.
And there wasn't the internet in those days for you to then sell it.
I couldn't actually put it online because there was no online.
Okay.
So anyway, so that's two things. That was two things. What about you? Two things. You've got two things now.
I'm going to piggyback that, because what you can do these days is you can either part make a product or even not make a product and advertise it online, where you because there's two things. First of all, when you advertise it online using either Google or Facebook, or doing a bit of SEO, but Facebook and Google are a very quick response in terms of finding out whether the consumer agrees with your thought process, i.e., do they, number one, like the product and the way that you are marketing it? And number two, do they like it enough to put their hand in their pocket? And those two things are quite distinctly different. And this is where somebody who is fresh off the mark can get a bit too enthusiastic and go, I'm going to make that product. I'm then going to go and get IP stuff. I'm going to, spend all my savings creating gazillions worth of stock. And then I'm going to go and then market it.
Wrong way round.
Wrong way round. And the great thing about today is you can create the website. You can mock up what it would look like in terms of the product. You can also, sort of play around with how you would want to market it via your website or on Facebook. And then you can then test it by having people coming onto your website and seeing, number one, whether they click the add to cart button. And then number two, when they click to purchase, which is the next element of it, because people will add to cart and not purchase because all they want to do is find out how much is it, what's it like, what happens, and they've got no intention of buying. So it is no guarantee that if they add to cart that it's going to be successful. But if they hit the buy now button or purchase now or whatever you wish to have on your buy now button, if they hit that, you can then direct them to a page to say something like, currently sold out, click here to go on the waiting list. Okay. And that way you then know for sure that that person or those people definitely wanted to buy that product because they clicked the buy now button. Okay.
Very good.
And that way you can then test things for a minimal amount of money. And you can spend a few £100 on advertising to see whether the people are going to like the product. Now, there is an argument to say twofold. Number one, the product could be excellent, but the website could be rubbish, and the way you market it could be rubbish, in which case then you still potentially have something that could sell. So you have the opportunity then to stop the advertising, tweak the marketing in terms of how you sell it, whether it be a video of you explaining it or what have you, and tweak the website. Once you've done that a few times though, generally if it's a great product and doesn't need to be explained, and I think that's one of the challenges possibly with the product that you tried to put into Harrods, if it's something that needs to be explained, then that makes it quite more challenging to market it. And the reason being is because you then suddenly have a bit of an education piece. And the problem is people's attention span in marketing is very, very short. So you can, and I do on my websites, use a piece of software that actually tracks what people do on the website. And you can actually see their recordings of where the customer goes on the website. You can actually watch their mouse and watch what they click on and watch what pages they go through to. And that can really help guide you as to what is going through the mind of the customer. This is not a privacy thing. You don't know who the customer is. All you get information wise is two things. You get to know where they are in the world, and you also get to know what browser and what computer they're on. Sorry, there's you can probably hear that noise in the background because I'm right next to somewhere where they are doing a bit of work, so just bear with us on that one. Now, this is where I am somebody who says if you have to do a big education piece on why somebody should buy it, then you've got to think long and hard about how you can get that information across in under 10 to 20 seconds. Because if you've lost the consumer, which most people will click off in under 30 seconds, okay? If you haven't got your message across as to why it's great, they will click off. And I've got an example of that before I hand it back to Ali. So when I first launched the chocolate, I had this video, which the first part of the video, which was about 15, 20 seconds of me saying, do you know how much sugar there is in normal chocolates? And it was me showing literally a glass of the amount of sugar that there is in normal chocolates. And I thought, this is brilliant. I'm educating the people about how much sugar there is in normal chocolate. The problem is the consumer didn't want to know. I thought they did, and they did not care. And so I then cut that bit off the beginning of the video and went straight into, I am the producer of a low sugar, dairy-free chocolate that has gluten-free, sugar-free, etc., etc., etc. And I went straight into what it was, so people could get exactly what it was instantly. And as a result, suddenly the sales started to come in. So testing is really, really important. But remember, there are so many variables in that testing. And so you do want to test everything to destruction before deciding whether it's a winner or a loser. But the great thing about it is you can literally spend, £20 on one test, £20 on another test, £20 on another, and you can end up spending a few £100 to find out actually this isn't going to sell. The consumer has no interest in it whatsoever, even though you think it's amazing. Whereas, we've all made those mistakes. You go and spend a load of money preparing the product, getting it ready, and then it doesn't sell. And then you are, completely stuffed, like the guy that ended up being bankrupt selling the stuff to Selfridges. So what's your next tip, Ali?
So my next tip is about keeping a handle on the numbers. So what happened to me was I employed an MD, a managing director, because I was moving into another business, which is where I'm in now. And I wanted that business to sort of run itself. So I employed someone as an MD who interviewed incredibly well, seemed a very sort of strong, knowledgeable woman. And I was so keen to hand the reins over I handed it over too soon, and I didn't have a handle on the numbers, and neither did she, until one of my staff pointed out that, because she was doing a cash flow, but not often enough. And basically, if we'd have left it going that way, probably we would have been bankrupt in 6 weeks.
Amazing.
And it was my fault because I hadn't really held her hand enough, so it wasn't all her fault. And I handed it over too soon, and I didn't check on what she was doing. I just went.
You thought that she had that she sold herself to you.
Well, she sold herself to me, but
she would have all that handled.
She did, but it's my duty to check.
Yeah.
So if despite who's someone who interviews very well, you need to check, and you need to check that you personally have a handle on the numbers, and don't actually hand that responsibility over to someone else until you really, really trust them, because that took me right to the edge. So yes, that's my next tip. Keep a handle on the numbers yourself.
Yeah. Okay. The next tip I would have is it's not who you hire, it's who you don't fire that is going to be the difference between success and failure. And what I mean by that is taking Ali's example as a really good example, where you take somebody on board and you find out that they are not performing. And what we do generally as kind-hearted people who are caring and want people to succeed and what have you, is we give them extra time, we forgive them, we do whatever in order to help them put it right. Now that, I think, is the right action. However, you only give them 1 or 2 chances to sort that out. Because I have done that, similar to Ali, where I have had somebody on board, and because I felt sorry for them, I kept them on in the position, and that did end up with one of my businesses causing me to go bankrupt. So I did end up bankrupt because I was stupid and not, I was just too kind. And I should have chopped the person who was causing the issue quickly and moved on and found somebody who would actually love that job. Because that's the other thing is that there are plenty of people out there who would love to work for you and would love to support you and will do a great job. So why struggle on with somebody who doesn't really have your best interests at heart and who are not very good at the job? Another example of that was that when I was running my recruitment agency, we had the tech bubble burst first of all, and the recruitment industry started hemorrhaging staff very quickly. I didn't, and then September the 11th happened when the Twin Towers happened, and I found out that my competitors made people redundant that day. I mean, how freaking heartless is that? They actually made people redundant that afternoon that the Twin Towers came down, because they went, this is going to be an absolute disaster and we're going to make a move first. And I thought that was a heartless thing to do. And I stuck with my staff right through thick and thin for the next few months, where we went from taking big money to taking no money. And I ended up paying all of their wages. And then when it all came through and I was saying, look, I'm going to stick with you to the team, when it eventually blew over and business started to return, which was a good 6 to 9 months later, what happened was those other recruitment agencies who now didn't have staff came knocking on my door and poached my staff and basically said, we'll offer you a pay rise to come and work for us. And instead of the staff going, do you know what? You stuck with us through thick and thin. I'm going to stick with you. You were there for me. They went, I'm sorry, but I've got a better offer elsewhere. And I have just hemorrhaged £300,000 to £400,000 paying your salaries because I felt bad about letting you go. And when it came to the other way round, when business started to get better, they jumped at the first offer of some more money and said, sorry, but I've got to take it. And that was a massive lesson to me. That
big lesson.
That people are only out for themselves. And actually, and as I say, that was one of two things that ended up with me going bankrupt with that business. I look back on that now and go, number one, I should have got rid of them a lot quicker and just said, look, I'm sorry, but we're all out for each other and we're all out for ourselves. And I've got to protect the business and I've got to protect myself and my family. And I'm sorry, but that's the way the world is. And actually spend that time then looking for people who are better at the job, who could do a better, because that was the other thing. I employed people who didn't have experience. I trained them up, and it took a while to train them up. And that was another big mistake for me. When you're a small company, training people up takes far too long, and the return on investment is so much smaller and so slower. And then what happens is you've then got them trained up. Somebody else comes along and goes, thanks very much. We will pay them 5-10 grand more and they'll come and work for us. And we've had no training costs whatsoever. You've done it all over the last 2 years. So that's my next tip. What about you?
Yeah, I think I've got a couple of little tips along that lines as well about staff and training staff up. So I had a clinic and I had therapists working in my clinic. But what I did do, which was a positive thing, was when I had staff that came and I needed to get them trained in something, I actually stipulated that if they don't stay longer than however many, like 9 months or 12 months, whatever it is, they would have to pay for the training, because it's a big investment training these girls up to do certain treatments. So that was something that was very useful because they did think twice about leaving. And the other thing is about having people with aligned values, because one of the things that I really think was my big downfall was not having the team with the same values as I have. I'm very open-minded, I'm very ambitious, I think big, and I had a team that was thinking small. And I never felt that they were really behind any of my big, great ideas. Not that they were all great ideas, but behind my ideas. So I think it was about cohesion and about communication and making sure that the team is aligned with your vision. So I think that's very important. And I do have a very brief story about someone who wasn't in alignment with my vision.
Well, do you know what I think we should do?
What?
Because we've run out of time. I'd like you to hold that and we'll do a part 2.
All right.
So thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, please like, comment and share. And we'll see you on the next one.